this judge, this federal judge, Judge Mizell, Catherine Kimball Mizell, was appointed by Donald Trump in November of 2020, after he had lost the election. The American Bar Association had rated this 33-year-old as unqualified to be a federal judge. And yet, Donald Trump gave her a lifetime appointment on the federal bench. She then ruled that where the law that created the Environmental Protection Agency and the CDC, so this is specific to the CDC actually, the EPA is more, Neil Gorsuch is, he wants to take them on. But when Congress granted the CDC, they gave them the power to take such measures as they deem necessary, in the word of the law, necessary, to protect public health, including things like, quote, sanitation. And the CDC has been interpreting sanitation as a mask mandate. And she says, no, 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 no. I went to high school. Now, keep in mind, she canceled the oral arguments in this case. Both sides' lawyers were prepared to make an argument before her. She canceled that. She said, that's okay, I got this stuff. I understand these things. I am an unqualified judge according to the American Bar Association, but I'll show you. And she said, when the law says sanitation, they're not talking about things like mask mandates. They're talking about bleach. They're talking about the CDC having the ability to require hygienic steps. She said, if Congress intended this definition, the power bestowed on the CDC would be breathtaking, and it would not be limited to modest measures of, quote, sanitation like masks. She said the CDC could require businesses to install air filtration systems. Oh, my God. Could mandate that people take vaccines. We see that this is clearly tyranny. And even require people to cough into their elbows and take daily multivitamins. This is the best mind the Republican Party has. So she says, okay, so what if you're flying and you're immune compromised? So what if you are flying and you're taking a drug for your arthritis that reduces the efficiency and effectiveness of your own immune system and its response to vaccines? So what if you're flying with children who are too young to be vaccinated? Brooke Tansley tweets, here we are trapped in the sky with our 8-month-old unmasked baby. You can't really put a mask on a baby that young, under the supposition that everyone on the flight will be masked, and Flight 325's flight crew has just taken away our choices from us. We are very angry about this. She says, I'm on a plane with my 2 not yet eligible for vax kids, and the pilot just announced that the mask mandate just ended this minute. We don't have the opportunity to make travel choices that fit with our family's vaccination status and risk comfort level. We are trapped in the air. Now, the fact of the matter is that this mask mandate was supposed to expire in 2 weeks, but that could have been extended. This decision by this Trump-appointed single federal judge who took it upon herself to lay this on the whole country as if she was the friggin' Supreme Court. She's not even an appeals court judge. She's just a federal district judge who was rated, did I tell you, unqualified by the American Bar Association, but is a big follower of Donald Trump and right-wing, this is crazy. This is just absolutely crazy. How would you respond to this? I'm like, I was thinking, okay, my best friend Jerry lives in New York. I was thinking of going out and visiting him. He was thinking about coming out and visiting us. On the assumption that it was relatively safe to fly because you could wear a mask on a plane. One of my kids' parents-in-law are in their 80s, and they came out and visited a week or so ago, didn't get COVID because everybody was wearing masks. I mean, thank God. Right? But people in their 80s and 90s, do you think they're going to get on airplanes? Do you think the airlines are going to get some blowback? Are they going to get a whole bunch of cancellations now? Or am I just like way out on a limb here? You know, way too concerned about this. Which brings us to our geeky science. This was published first over at dailycoz.com by Nova Psyche. It's basically a new study out of Tulane University down in New Orleans. And they were looking at changes in the brains using things like CT scans and pathology reports from people who had died of COVID or other diseases, but had COVID, and then they just cross-section their brains. And what they found is that even in mild forms or onsets of the disease, even with asymptomatic presentation, in other words, no symptoms, the brain may experience diffuse yet profound insult in the form of innumerable microbleeds throughout the brain. This follows another study that was done in Europe that said that, quote, COVID-19 is associated with a 33-fold increase in pulmonary embolism and blood clots, and a 5-fold increase in deep vein thrombosis due to blood clotting abnormalities. This from the study at Tulane University, quote, this work reveals neuroinflammation, brain hypoxia, microhemorrhages, and pathology consistent with hypoxic ischemic injury. In other words, strokes that cause a lack of oxygen to part of the brain and kill that part of the brain. Our findings are consistent with those reported on autopsied brains of human subjects who died with SARS-CoV-2 infections. I mean, they just basically lay it right out. In logistic, this is from the study, right? In logistic regression analyses, the presence of microbleeds was the only independent predictor of executive dysfunction. Now, what is executive dysfunction? That means the inability to restrain yourself. This is something that happens in the frontal part of the prefrontal cortex. And when it's damaged, this was Phineas Gage, the guy who was driving a stake back in the 1860s in the railroads, and this giant railroad stake, for the holding down the rails, flies up and goes right into the middle of his forehead. And suddenly, this very nice guy that everybody liked becomes an ass. And he starts swearing at people and grabbing women's behinds and just doing all kinds of things that normally, people think about, but they restrain themselves from doing. He lost all restraint. So back to the study. In logical regression analysis, the presence of microbleeds from COVID was the only independent predictor of executive dysfunction. Interestingly, in individuals with executive dysfunction, microbleeds were predominantly located in the frontal lobes and basal ganglia, areas classically considered the neuroanatomical substrate for executive function. Executive function, again, being, our highest functions, our thought processes that result in restraint of behavior. These results suggest that microbleeds may actually have a negative effect on cognition, independent of other concurrent vascular lesions, and there seems to be an anatomical correlation between the distribution of microbleeds and the cognitive domains affected, suggesting a direct damage of microbleeds over the tissue as the pathogenic mechanism. It can lead to what they call dysexecutive syndrome, which, by the way, is what some people call ADHD in its mildest forms, dysexecutive syndrome in its mildest forms. They add brain fog. It may later lead to dementia resembling Alzheimer's disease. If the virus concentrates in the basal ganglia, as has been suggested by the Tulane study, we may see a dramatic increase in corticobasal dementia as the years progress, with symptoms resembling those of traumatic injury to the brain. Brilliant. But hey, if you're on an airplane, if you're trapped on an airplane, the airline says everybody can take their masks off and expose you to their diseases. Not only are we going to see more COVID, we're going to see more flu, we're going to see more RSV. In the Asian countries, where I've traveled and worked for years and years and years, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, I've been to all of them. And this was like 30, 40 years ago. During flu season, people wore masks, both to protect other people, but also if they had any symptoms at all, they would wear a mask as a sign of respect. We do not have a respectful society in this country. Right-wing ideology over the last 40 years has just turned us all into, hey, me, 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 me. Just a straight up question. I mean, I was seriously considering flying, and now I'm thinking, no way. I am not going to expose myself to this disease until we've got a better, more just absolutely airtight, like, the measles vaccine means that you're not going to get measles. Right, the mumps vaccine means you're not going to get mumps. The flu vaccine means you got a 50-50 chance. If flu is that deadly, I'd be worried about that. The COVID vaccine, again, yeah, you can still get it. In fact, it's better than a 50% chance you'll get it if you're exposed to high levels of it. You just won't get it so badly that you end up in the hospital. Okay, so that's the kind of bad news. The good news is that Moderna just published new clinical data that found that they got this brand new shot. It is not available yet to the public. The plan is that this vaccine will be available to the public this fall. And they're calling it the Bivalent booster vaccine, also known as mRNA-1273.214. And bivalent means, bi, two, valent sides, essentially, two different types. It's a dual vaccine. It has the kind of normal vaccine, the normal Moderna vaccine against all the previous COVIDs, but it also has a whole brand new mRNA vaccine that specifically targets Omicron and the other variants that have derived from Omicron. I mean, there's two brand new ones from Omicron that are just now starting to sweep through the Northeast. Pittsburgh went into, has reinstated mask mandates. They say our latest booster candidate, mRNA-1273.214, which combines the currently authorized Moderna COVID-19 booster with our Omicron-specific booster candidate, remains our lead candidate for the fall 2022 Northern Hemisphere booster. We believe that this bivalent booster vaccine, if authorized, will create a new tool as we continue to respond to emerging variants. That sounds like good news to me. Shane in Boulder, Colorado. Hey, Shane, what's on your mind?
Yeah, hi. I just heard you talking about wearing masks on the plane and about Asia. And I just returned from Nepal, from Kathmandu, Nepal. Mm-hmm. And everyone in Kathmandu, everybody in Nepal, they wear a mask.
Yeah.
And nobody is throwing a tantrum. Nobody is uncomfortable. Nobody is freaking out because everybody's wearing a mask. It's like putting your shoes on.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is, most of your Asian societies are very much, we're all in this together kind of societies, probably because of centuries of high population density.
Exactly. And, on the plane, everybody was wearing a mask. And so now if they drop the mask mandate, I wouldn't fly either.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think this is nuts. And I think the airlines are going to suffer as a consequence of it. Although maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's more people who are just willing to take chances, and they're going to learn the hard way. Shane, thanks for the exclamation mark at the end of my rant. I appreciate it.